everyone. Welcome back to Hospitality Today Live. I'm your host, Deborah Gardner. Thank you so much for joining us, not only this week, but every week, because you know I have amazing guests that really enjoy talking about real life topics, their perspectives, their opinions, their stories, and so much more. And today I have Nguyen, who is joining us with all of you viewers here today. And she is the head of community engagement for Twine. And Anne is going to be here to discuss the future role of technology and how connecting with remote teams works with technology as well. She's also going to talk about conversations within hospitality and how that plays out into the world, and also the role of women in hospitality, and so much more. I can't wait for you to meet her. So stay tuned. Don't go far. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. This episode is brought to you by Yard Art Greetings. Create memorable moments with bigger than life yard art here on Hospitality Today Live. Thank you all again for coming back to us again for a great week. And we want to welcome Anne. Hi, Anne.
Hi, Deborah. How are you?
Great. I know you're up in Canada. I'm clear down in Arizona. So We're covering a lot of ground here, but it's so nice to have you and representing Twine, because I know we're going to have a great conversation today here as well. So let's dive in really quick here, because we only have about 30 minutes together. The pandemic has given us so much opportunity to pause and redefine what we do. I know our viewers would really like to know, who is Twine? What does it mean? What's all, the concept behind it? So I know I've experienced it firsthand last year and had a blast. I mean, a complete blast. I have to tell you, I was on on Twine for, I think 2 hours, talking and connecting with other people. I could not stop. So I know our viewers are going to want to hear from you and what you have to say. So go ahead, share it.
Yeah, you're like what we would call like a powerhouse extrovert that could do that for 2 hours. Because I think even the most extroverted might need a break, but you're a super woman when it comes to that sense. So Twine is a virtual sort of networking and conversation platform where you are placed into conversations with people, either one-on-one or recently we have the ability now to place you into small group conversations. And there are conversation starters and topics and icebreakers that we include in there to help move the conversation along or spark dialogue. And the conversations are timed. So there's a specific time they'll end, and you know that you'll get matched onto the next person. So what we're trying to recreate in the virtual world is, when you used to connect with a colleague in the hallway or at the water cooler, or you run into someone at the lobby bar, like all of those sort of serendipitous collisions that are a little bit harder to create online. It's not a meeting, so you're not sitting in a really, planned and very tight agenda and there's action items that you have to get through. It's not a meeting like that. It's more meant to be structured in the sense that you'll have structure to your conversation, but more of those serendipitous collisions, those unplanned connections, and meeting people that you otherwise wouldn't meet, which is probably what the best part of Twine is the surprise of who you're going to get matched with next. And then it just sort of carries you along the experience, and you wait to see who you're going to get matched with next, and you have some great conversations in there.
Oh, it is so much fun. I just had a blast, and it's like addictive, like social media is to all of us. Once you get on there and you're like matchmaking to other people, it's always a big surprise. And sometimes you know them, especially if it's an internal company. But these are opportunities for people to talk to each other that they usually don't. And I believe they pick the topics that they want to discuss and solve problems this way, right?
Yeah, and that's a great description of it, in the sense that I think the addictive part of it might be the human connection, right? So you're not, when you're working in a remote team, or you reach out to someone, it requires like putting a time together, meeting, and you feel like, if I've imposed on your time, Deborah, then I need to have like an agenda and some outcomes, and so that I'm not wasting your time. And the nice thing about Twine is it removes all of that sort of social pressure and construct, that you can just come have conversations. That's what everyone is there for, but it's not a formal meeting. So it gives you the chance to meet with people that you otherwise wouldn't meet with, which in the remote world is so important, right? The conversations that you used to have with like Doug in accounting, where you would ask him about his daughter's ballet recital. You're not going to do that. You're not going to call up someone on a Zoom and just be like, tell me about your
Right.
recital, if you don't regularly talk to Doug. But so Twine just gives you the opportunity to have a really safe and comfortable space to have those types of more, personal conversations, or conversations based on the topics. And we find that people just enjoy connecting with each other as humans, right? Like that's what the core element of it is, just the isolation and the loneliness of the remote world that we all live in now. People are just kind of craving that connection.
Right.
And that it doesn't always have to be related to something you're working on, or a project, or outcomes. It can be just about who you are and who I am, and we come together and share some ideas. And so, yeah, people generally, like you, have a really good time just hanging out and talking.
Yeah, and there's no pressure whatsoever. We're just having conversations back and forth, and it is amazing how you can discover new knowledge from those that you're talking to, and within yourself. I mean, there are times I'm like, wow, I didn't even think about that, but because of the conversation, it sparked that new idea. And I tell you, I was writing down notes and people that
so
I've
great.
never met before. And
you should be our spokesperson. You should be our spokesperson. Yeah, very much so. And we're very intentional about the questions that we provide, or help our clients curate. So it's not just, get into this networking thing and talk about your favorite type of car, right? Which maybe is interesting, but it's pretty superficial. So questions like, what's something that sparked joy for you this week, Deborah? And how someone answers that tells you a lot about who they are. And the questions are meant to dig a little bit deeper and just get to the human side of it, which, like you said, is the part that we're all missing.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, that's why I had to have you on the show, because I want everyone in the hospitality world to know about you and Twine. And I went to your website, which I love this. It says more conversations, more connections, more impact. So that, I believe, is a huge mission that you all really do a great job of accomplishing. And I understand you're global as well.
Yeah, we are. We have a team across the globe, from myself, the lone Canadian for now. A lot of our team based in the US, some of our engineers based in Argentina, based in India. We have a support team in the Philippines. So yeah, it some of the things you miss about interacting in real life, in the real world, some of the pros of the remote world is how globally connected we can be, and how as a team we can support our clients from anywhere and everywhere. So there's lots of members of the team that I haven't had a chance to meet, and the rest of us sort of connect once a quarter in person, but otherwise we use Twine, we use technology to help support that. So there's lots of benefits as well to now that we all live online. But it's a great time. And I think in terms of the hospitality world, that's whether it's a technology or a tool or a product or what you're using, that's what we're all trying to do, right? And if it's a live event, is that impact, is creating a space where conversations and ideas can get exchanged, and then the impact of those things on your attendees, whether that's virtual or in person. I think that's still the same reason lots of people go into events and hospitality.
Right. And with online not going away, being a global company, you are able to service any type of meeting that wants to, have that remote connection. all over the world, and that is amazing. So any viewers out there watching right now, or even have any questions, come on board, and Anne will be here to answer those. But definitely take advantage of looking at Twine for your next event online for sure. And when we're talking about the role of technology, you all are really playing in the game to make sure that you stay ahead of the game, actually. What are you seeing for the role of technology here in the future?
Yeah, and it's so interesting you say that, because prior to joining Twine, I owned and still own an event planning company here in Canada. So I came from the real life event world, moved over to technology, and I'm learning a ton about how it can be used to support events, right? Virtual or in person. And I think the biggest thing as a hospitality and event industry we need to realize is the technology is still just the container, whether it's a hotel venue or a platform or a product like ours. All of the stuff that we do as event planners, the design, the thinking through how to create context and framing the conversations, the questions we put into our product, all of that is still event design, hospitality, hosting someone, right? When you're talking to a hospitality audience, we do a lot of work to make sure that people are in the right mindset to even join a Twine. So for example, in Twine, you can't turn off your camera. It's a setting, it's a choice that we've made because we think a more authentic conversation can happen if you can see each other. And there's a lot of work that you have to do to make sure people feel safe going into that space so that they can have a productive conversation. So all of that is the same hospitality design, the same hosting, the same creating a safe and welcoming space for people to feel like they can show up as themselves. And whether you do that online or in person at a hotel ballroom, all those principles are the same. The principles that we've learned as event designers and experience designers still really matter, right? So
Sure.
I think one of the things is, we to an extent expect technology to solve everything, and we maybe think a little bit less about the design and experience journey for our attendees in a virtual world. And I think it's just as important to think about, where are our customers coming in? Where are they interacting with us? How does that look? What does it make them feel like? All of that kind of empathy of the buyer's journey and understanding the customer and attendee journey that hospitality folks are so great at doing, right? You know exactly how someone feels when they come into your venue. What are they greeted with? What do they see? What do they feel? What do they smell? What do they hear? All of that stuff. All those design principles are still really, really practical and relevant, even in the virtual world. And I think events, whether they're online or in person, when they fall apart is when there hasn't been thought put into that, right? You just put something together and hope people show up. And yeah, I think especially now where people's attention spans and the demand on their time is much, much more intense. Combined with people, I think after 20 months being able to handle a lot less in terms of stress and their resilience tanks are low. You have to be really intentional about, if you ask someone to dedicate some time to your product or your event or whatever, what you're doing with it.
Right. So very, very good points. And that leads me to talking to you about and getting your perspective on conversations within hospitality and how the world sees those in the hospitality industry and how they are trying to connect. What is it about having conversations that really does drive whether it's virtual or in-person events?
Yeah, I think we live in such a polarized world, and we spend so much time on our social media channels, scrolling our Twitter feed or LinkedIn or whatever. And it's so much like black or white, vaccinated or not, COVID, all of this stuff, right? You have to pick a side. And if someone happens to disagree with you, they somehow are made into becoming like the enemy. And when you hide behind these digital walls and keyboards, it's way easier to just get sucked into that mindset. But the best conversations I've ever had, or the best moments I've ever had that have changed my mind or broadened my perspective on a topic, is when I've been able to sit down in a conversation with someone and really listen to their perspective, felt like it was a safe space where empathy was at play, and, recognizing that there's another human behind the opinion. We really believe that like conversations, in-depth, meaningful, impactful conversations is how people change their minds or learn and grow, and how as a collective we move beyond whether it's black and white. There's so much gray in the middle, right? Like the gray that matters is an important part, and you only find innovative and new solutions in that gray, right? If we both stuck on our different sides and we continue to move further and further apart, we're never going to find innovative solutions. So the ability to not just have, it's like, it has to be A or B. It's so binary. It's like to hold conflicting opinions in your brain and think critically about it and do research and learn from other people. I think that's what events are all about, right? So
right. And you're so spot on, because today information is everywhere. You can get information anywhere today. But like you said, those innovative solutions have to come from within, and those conversations within each other can develop that. So I think you're spot on about that, because that's where you have the real conversations, in other words.
Yeah. And I think listening with curiosity, and rather than saying, well, I think you're wrong about that, the idea of saying, how did you come to that conclusion, right? Like even just language, and there's lots of great stuff out there around, Adam Grant puts out great content on how you actually go into conversations and language you can use that encourages you to listen versus wait for your turn to express your opinion. And in a one-on-one conversation, when your cameras are both on and you're talking to each other and you're being vulnerable and you're being open, we then get back to the core of like, hey, we're all humans, right? And we're not born to hate each other, but it's like, how can we bridge these gaps? And I think it's in those middle areas, in the gray, where we build those bridges and figure out it's not just has to be A or B. There's some sort of C solution that together we can come up with.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's what events are all about, right? Is building that space and building that forum for these conversations to happen.
Right. So you brought up a very good point here that, a lot of things have changed in technology and everything. So conversations need to change too. But we have a question for you as well, from Visibly Media, who said, how can we develop critical listening skills to really, truly hear what is being said? Yeah, that's a good question too.
That is a great question. And, if we could all master this a little bit, I think the world would be in a lot better place. So I think the one thing quickly realizing is that it's really hard to critically listen, think, and develop and communicate ideas on social media. So I have a hard and fast rule where if I get into a disagreement with someone on Twitter past like 2 or 3 threads, I try to get them into a conversation, like a video call or whatever, because it just doesn't really bode well to continue trying to do it in like 280 characters or whatever. But yeah, the language that you use in terms of curiosity and asking someone how they came to a certain conclusion versus, I think, your conclusion is wrong. A really great question to ask is, if I was totally, or what's the question? If the other person is totally right, like what's the worst case scenario? And if I'm totally right, what's the worst case scenario? So in arguments with partners, they always say, what would happen if my wife or husband or partner was completely correct and I was completely wrong? Like frame out that scenario in your head, and then frame out what's the opposite. If I was completely right and they were completely wrong, what would I miss out on without their side of it, right? So really, I think it starts with listening with some curiosity and going into it, not, like you said, not as an attack, but trying to learn why the other person has that perspective is important. And a really good tip someone said is to identify the values that are being at risk, right? So if someone is, I'm just going to use like, I don't know, gun control as an example, but like, typically it's not about whether or not I want to buy a gun or not. It's like, I feel my safety is at risk. So getting really curious about why do you feel unsafe and what values are being stepped upon here? And where do you feel threatened from a values-based perspective? Typically, as humans, we can come down to the same value. We both value safety. It's just showing up differently. But once you get down to that common denominator of what we value, it really helps to see the other person as a human rather than,
Right.
someone that's just carrying a gun because they want to. And I hate guns and now I hate them, right? Like that's the
Right.
world we live in. So
Right.
it takes time. And as I'm raising a toddler, trying to teach her critical thinking skills eventually, right? And like how to go out there and gain information on her own rather than just seeing what she reads and believing it. Like that's the hard part because it's so easy for us to get sucked into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Very good answer to that question. And I know Visibly Media, who happens to be one of our sponsors here as well, understands all that. And they want to actually add another little question here. Let's see. I think you even talked about a little bit about this. So not making the immediate assumption everyone is going to attack good thoughts. So that's a good comment pertaining to that as well. And then we've got Lisa here who has a question. Do you have tips you can use to resist the urge to react when that's become the go-to due to the immediacy of social media?
Yeah. I mean, this is tricky for sure. Like the need to feel like you're right is really something I need to keep in check often, right? Where it's like, am I responding to this because I'm adding value to the conversation or because I need to feel right? And if you can just even for a split second, take that moment to say, I think I'm only responding to this because for some reason I need to feel right. That has stopped me from sending a lot of tweets that like sit in my drafts, right?
Right.
And I think just, being really structured about when you are on social media and the time that you spend and what kind of mindset you're in when you're doing it. And to the point where there's certain topics where I will just mute it, right? Like you have to look after your own mental wellness, and whatever you put into your brain affects everything else in your brain. So there's certain topics, certain keywords, anyone who's watching that lives in Alberta knows that it's a pretty interesting time up here. And there's certain things that I just have had to mute, right? Because it's like, there's no goodness that can come out of me consuming content, and there's nothing I can put out there that will be of value to the world. So just sort of monitoring how you interact with your social media. And because it can be a great place. Most of my really good friends in the industry I met through social media, but you have to be intentional about curating what you're taking in for sure.
You do. And I believe I was watching Simon Sink the other day, and he was even talking about how listening skills are very, very important as well. And he said the best way to listen is to be the last one to speak. So I thought, okay, I can try doing that, hold my tongue a little bit longer and before I give my opinion and say something, and just kind of listen to see what everybody else is saying. And that's hard to do, but
it's so hard to do,
but very important to do at the same time. Well, let's switch gears a little bit here and talk about the role of women in the industry, in particular leadership industry positions. And as you know, a couple of weeks ago, we had the International Hospitality Women's Day, which was very, very successful. And hoping that along with other things that we're doing in the industry, will start kicking women into leadership roles. As a matter of fact, Cornell University had a study about women in hospitality, and it seems as though there are 65% of women in the workforce in the hospitality sector, but only 12% have leadership positions. So what's your comments on all of this?
So last week, I mean, I have lots of thoughts, but last week I attended a webinar put on by a client of ours with Allison Forgale, and she had such great thoughts on it. And I'll post the link to that episode when it's live, because it was so phenomenal in terms of some thoughts. So a couple thoughts she shared is like, women will only apply for a job if they feel like they're 100% qualified for it. So they have to check off every qualification on the list before they'll apply. Whereas a man, I think, will apply with 60% of it or something like that. So she talked about the shots on goal. So in sports, in hockey, like I'm up in Canada, so we'll use hockey, but the shots on goal isn't ever you make 100% of the shots, right? But it's the attempt and the trying, and no one expects your shots on goal to be 100%. That would be ridiculous. That would mean you're not making enough shots. So I thought that was really relevant. And then I also enjoyed a analogy she had where they talked a lot about whose responsibility is it to promote women. Is it our responsibility as women to self-advocate and position ourselves to be looked at for promotions and things like that, or is it the men's job who are in these leadership roles to sort of pull and sponsor and elevate these women? And she had a great analogy of, like, if you fell into a well, you wouldn't just like sit down there and hope someone comes along to help you, right? You would be doing everything that you can to get out of the well. And then when someone comes to get you, it's like, oh, I've made my way halfway up the well, and now you can help me the rest of the way. And I think just conversations about it, and both women taking initiative and feeling, confident enough to apply for those roles and self-advocate and ask for the things in terms of negotiating salary and positions. And then if you're in those power positions, whether you're a man or a woman, sponsoring and helping and uplifting the people that might need a hand because they haven't had the same privileges as you, like that kind of stuff. It's very mutually beneficial, and it's like sort of a mutual wellness thing where you can help each other. But I think it's having conversations about it and continuing to bring it up and bringing up stats like that to make it clear, and questioning your organizations, right? If you are a woman in a position of leadership, similar to, so at Twine, I sit with like our executive management team. And when you're at that table, ask the questions for the people that can't, right? So we talk all the time about how are we doing for hiring women, diversity, across all race, gender, sexuality, all of that stuff. If you have a seat at the table, I think it's a little bit your responsibility to make sure that those conversations are happening.
So, Anne, do you feel, I would love that link, by the way. That sounds really, really interesting. And yet, so do you believe what is going on here as far as women trying to get into leadership positions? Do you feel that it is their choice? Because, with what's going on around the world right now, it seems like, we're either, not having a choice of abortion. We're not having a choice of having a vaccine. Do women have this choice if they want a leadership position to actually go and get it?
That's a complex topic, and I don't necessarily think that's true. I certainly am a believer in the systemic issues in how things are set up to keep certain populations, marginalized populations that are oppressed in that space. And, these are the tough conversations we have to have, right? And the idea that it's not your fault specifically as a white man, that as an Asian woman, I have a harder time getting into positions of leadership, but it is the system that has been built, right? And how can we have conversations about how to break those systemic barriers? And there are certain populations that are not privileged enough to access any of the things we talked about, right? So even in the vaccine world, it's like, it's not just whether you want to get vaccinated or not. It's like, have we talked about the populations that don't have access to the internet or don't have access to transportation or childcare, time off work to go get vaccinated? And looking more at the way the system is broken, and how anyone who is benefiting from the system, whether, and even myself as a visible minority female, I have privileges that other people don't, and recognizing my privileges and taking the opportunity to help break down some of the barriers that will help other people. We certainly don't do that enough. I don't do that enough. Like, it's hard to come out of your world and see the whole thing all the time when you're so, and especially in a day and age where you're so stressed and tired and burnt out from your own life, that to take on an additional onus of someone else's issues is just almost like the straw that broke the camel's back. But it's like, those are the people that have to help, right? Is the ones that have the privilege and know that they're part of a broken system on lots of different levels, and how are we breaking down those barriers. So I don't think it's necessarily as simple as like, if you're a woman and you're not in a position of leadership, it's just because you didn't try hard enough. Or, you know, we really have to go back to like how our education system is set up, how our labor system is set up, all of those things, banking, all of that stuff, to figure out how we can make it easier for those people, right? The people who've been in marginalized populations for so long because of the way the system is set up.
Right.
Yeah.
And it goes all back to what you've been saying from the beginning of the show. It's all based on conversations, and how those conversations need to change along with the world. And working at Twine, you're able to create those type of conversations with companies that want to, you know, bring that to the surface with their remote teams.
Imagine if you had asked me that question on Twitter and I tried to respond on Twitter. There's no way I would have been able to articulate anything that wouldn't have offended somebody, right? And but if you and I are having a conversation, you can see my body language, eye contact, all of that stuff. That's like, we're gonna get somewhere, and we're gonna find some common ground, maybe. But and that's what the greatest thing about Twine is. It's all about talking. It's all about conversations.
Yep, it is. Wow. And all this information that you've shared today is just, it's just been brilliant, because we haven't talked about this on the show before. So thank you so much for your brilliancy, and letting our viewers see what exactly what Twine is all about. And if anybody has any questions pertaining to that, they certainly can contact me, because I've experienced it firsthand. But also they can contact you as well. And so I wanted to give everybody your email website they've got to check out. How else can they connect with you, Anne?
Yeah, my close friends will tell you that the best way to get in touch with me is probably via my Twitter. So it's just ATNGUYEN, my last name, and you'll find it if you find Twine. And We Are Twine is our handle on all the social media channels. So we're around. I'm hard to miss. I have lots of opinions that I tweet about all the time, probably to my boss's dismay. But so I'd be happy to connect with anyone there. Otherwise, shoot me an email, and happy to have a conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you. This has been very, very enlightening to know what Twine is doing and what they're up to, and how you all are really out there at helping those connect, in other words, with unique and different conversations. And that's what it's all about. So thank you so much for being with us. It's been a delight. And I know I'll be seeing you out here, whether it's virtually or in person.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I know it's a bit of a weird fit for the hospitality world to have these tech people infiltrate.
I know, right?
Yeah,
they've been pushing to be in, and finally they're in.
These relentless tech folks that won't ever give up. So so appreciate it, and I will shoot over that link to that webinar with Allison, because it was great in terms of content for anyone who's trying to sort of level the playing field for women in their organization.
That would be great. And we have one more. Ray Grace, who is a big fan of the show. He's very informative. Thank you so much. And
thanks, Ray.
truly, that is so true. So I know a lot of people are going to want to see, especially the replays of these. So people just don't go too far. We'll be right back. So thank you so much, Anne. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, there you go. Like I mentioned, that was just amazing information from Anne, and we definitely want to encourage you to stay in touch with her. Check out Twine, because again, it's all about getting these conversations to look different, so that you can find innovative solutions and reconnect with those at a much deeper level. And let me tell you, a fun way of doing it too. So definitely stay in touch with her. And if you enjoyed this show, by all means know that there will be a replay on all your favorite social media platforms. Take a look and share it with people that might not have a chance to see this as well. It really will benefit a lot of different teams out there. And we want to thank our sponsor, Yard Art Greetings, as well, for sponsoring today's episode. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, please stay in touch with us at hello@hospitalitytodaylive.com. We would love to connect and have some unique conversations with you there as well. So let's talk about next week. we have another Canadian joining us as well. We're talking about Yvonne Baston. She is the event management guru. And if you want to know what that means, well, by all means, you don't want to miss this episode. And she's also going to talk about the power of hosting online enrollment events, how to build relationships with audiences online. And she has some tips for your audiences to help elevate their success at your event. So again, that's something you will not want to miss at all. So there you go. We had another great show here. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Deborah Gardner, your host here. And remember, if you're thinking about it, we're talking about it right here on Hospitality Today Live. See you all next week.